Hey guys, I wanted to talk today about a very touchy, sensitive subject for me, something that is very personal and somewhat difficult to talk about because it involves the most traumatic thing I've ever went through, which was losing my daughter, Shiloh, in February of 2020. And I wanted to talk about my experience, what happened to her, and how it is relevant to what is currently happening on a worldwide stage. And so, a little background, my daughter Shiloh was 7, she was 7.5, and a very healthy child. Nothing really wrong with her physically, other than the fact that she had inattentive ADD and was a little bit hyperactive and had some issues with impulse control. But other than that, there was no allergies. She was just a very healthy, energetic little girl. And one night she was running around playing after dinner when my oldest, well, not my oldest son, her older brother Gabe, saw her start to stumble like she was confused, and then she just dropped to the ground. And we didn't know it, but she was going into cardiac arrest, and we knew something was really wrong. So I scooped her up, we raced her to the hospital. When she got to the hospital, she was in AFib, which means that the heart was like quivering but not really pumping blood. So her brain wasn't getting oxygen. She was very, very near death, and they intubated her and were doing chest compressions, and they administered multiple shocks to try to normalize her heart rate and get her heart beating. And they were able to get a pulse back a couple of times over the course of throughout the night. I don't know, 4 or 5 hours, and then but she just kept slipping away, and they had to call it. And at that point, she had been airlifted to the Children's Hospital in St. Paul, where they were hoping that the best experts could manage to stabilize her and save her life, but they just couldn't. And at the time, we had no idea what caused her death. We were just shocked, and we were in shock, and of course, just needing an answer at that point. And they told us before we left the hospital that they were going to do an autopsy, and I think in large part was to rule out foul play. And I found out later that while we were in the hospital, we were being observed for our behavior. They were already looking for signs of foul play, which, I mean, I don't really take it personally, if those kind of steps, if it serves to stop child abuse, whatever. But so we thought we were gonna get answers from the autopsy, and that turned into a complete nightmare, where the medical examiner, a doctor in St. Paul, he was horrible to us. He called us multiple times and was grilling us, because I think it really, in hindsight, it was his professional frustration because he couldn't find a cause of death. Shiloh was very healthy. There was nothing wrong with her heart. There was trauma to her body that was the direct result of the life-saving efforts she had undergone. Hours of CPR, like violent, the heart massage type stuff, that it was horrifying to witness. It was extremely traumatic. I thought for sure all of her ribs were going to be broken. But I mean, so because of her cardiac arrest and the life-saving efforts that were extremely traumatic to her body, she had pulmonary edema, which is just fluid in the lungs, and she had also aspirated when they were struggling to intubate her in the ER that we initially took her to. So she had inflammation in her trachea, some inflammation and fluid in her lungs. And he focused on that, even though he knew it wasn't the cause of death. And after calling us repeatedly, grilling us, asking us the same questions over and over again, he was very evasive about how he was going to classify this death. And we were just grieving, traumatized parents just wanting answers. And we were being treated like suspects and being given the runaround. This guy wasn't giving us anything other than the fact that he told us he was going to rule it as a natural cause. And we didn't really know what he meant by that. But when we got her death certificate in the mail, he had ruled her death, the cause of death, as being from an upper and lower respiratory tract infection. And, you know, supporting causes was bilateral pneumonia, and basically saying that she died of a cold, which was absolutely not true and ridiculous. She, on her last day of life, was totally healthy. She had been in school that day. I actually have a picture of her from that day. I mean, you can see that she was, you know, obviously really healthy. She had a ceremony, a school ceremony that day where she was running around the gym. Lots of her teachers saw her. I talked to them later, like, was Shiloh coughing? You know, did you see any signs that would indicate that there was something wrong? And everyone said no. And I got that in written, signed form to give to this medical examiner, because I confronted him. I called him and I said, you know that she did not die of a cold, basically. She wasn't sick. She clearly went into cardiac arrest. And he admitted to me on the phone that that was the case. But he said that because he was at the end of his career and he had a lot of professional pride, he refused to, because, you know, post-sudden cardiac arrest deaths, there's really no smoking gun evidence that they can point to and be like, yes, this was a sudden cardiac arrest death, because her heart was normal. What was happening was that there was a problem with the electrical rhythm of her heart, which there's no evidence of post-mortem. So he ruled her death in a way that would protect himself. And he indicated to me that he thought I should just be happy that me and my husband were being cleared of wrongdoing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Of course we didn't cause her death. We just want answers to why our healthy 7-year-old daughter died. So, I mean, it was a complete joke. It was a farce. It was basically a cover-up. Her death certificate still says that she died of upper and lower respiratory tract infection. And I had to pray through and I had to release it. I had to let it go because I had so much anger. I was already hurting so bad, and we just wanted answers, and this guy was horrible to us. He covered up the real cause of her death because basically just wanting to cover himself. And when I confronted him on the phone about it, he agreed with me, and he said he would change the cause of her death to indicate that it was a sudden cardiac arrest. But then he changed his mind. He called me back 20 minutes later with that same basically pride nonsense that he had his reputation to think of. And I looked him up later. It's I'll say it, it's Dr. Froloff in St. Paul. And he had been involved in a lot of high profile cases. He was used frequently as a witness on the stand. So apparently he had his reputation to think of, and that came before giving grieving parents some sort of closure or answers. But he did, in this time period, recommend that we look into the SUDC, which is Sudden Unexplained Death in Children organization that studies these kinds of things and takes a more in-depth look into these kinds of sudden and unexplained deaths in children. So we did, and they took our case, and one of the things that they did was they took samples of blood from myself and my husband, and we gave them permission to request and receive samples left over from Shiloh's autopsy. And we haven't received the full report yet because everything has been just so slowed down because of the pandemic. But they did get back to us, I think it was like sometime last year, with the results of the genetic testing, and Shiloh did have a genetic mutation in her RYR2 gene, which has to do with the calcium channels in the heart and how it's regulating, the electrical system that controls your heartbeat. And she had this mutation, so that was enough proof for me that Shiloh had died from a sudden cardiac arrest. And that, you cannot imagine the trauma when you lose a child suddenly and you don't know why. And I had made peace with that spiritually before I got this result. But by the time I got it, I didn't really need it, the closure that I wanted so badly early on, but I did get it. And I was like, yeah, I'm not surprised. This type of thing is extremely rare. And, you would only ever occasionally hear about children, healthy children, dropping and suddenly dying, going into cardiac arrest, usually in some sort of physical activity. And there was almost never any warning signs. The first incident, I did a lot of research, and I believe in 70% of these types of cases, the first warning sign incident is when the child collapses and goes into cardiac arrest. So there's no warning. And I later connected with another mother who had lost 2 children because, they were carriers of some sort of genetic mutation that predisposed their children to this. And they had lost the first child, their son, and then they had taken all the precautions with their 2 remaining children, including getting they got the pacemaker put in the remaining daughter later, but then her 5-year-old child, she had done everything right for this kid, and she leaves this kid's side for just mere moments at a pool party, and the child collapses, goes into cardiac arrest, and dies. And I'm just like, it's such a trauma, it's such a tragedy, and it is extremely rare, and that's one reason why there was so much drama for us trying to figure out what actually happened to Shiloh, and the medical examiner's refusal to put what was, even at that time with what we knew, the most likely cause of death on her death certificate. So I just want to illustrate how incredibly rare that a true naturally caused sudden cardiac arrest in a healthy child is. And what an absolute there's no words to describe the evil and the horrors that have been unleashed on the whole world in these past 2 years since the rollout of this thing, and I can't even say it out loud because this video will get taken down. I mean, the censorship is unreal. And why do they have to censor us? Because we have the truth. They are lying to us. And the amount of sudden cardiac deaths has exploded in children and young adults. And guys, this was extremely rare. I mean, my daughter just died in 2020, and trying to figure out and pin down the cause of her death was a huge process. And now it's like you hear about athletes dropping, keeling over, young people, college students, doctors, especially the doctors in Canada that have had, they're being mandated to get all of the successive boosters. And these people who are, they're doctors and they're out living a natural, healthy lifestyle. They're out running marathons and swimming, and they're dying in their sleep. And they're trying to normalize it. And this is not okay. They're saying anything from global warming to the position you sleep in, or even exercise itself, stress is causing this onslaught of sudden cardiac deaths. And I'm like, those things we've always had, but a young person just suddenly dying like this is not normal. And I wanted to cite this article. I'll link below. And this article is a year old. I'm sure it's gotten way bigger than this since then, but it is so hard to find real statistics because not only are they purposefully not collecting them, but they're blocking and censoring, deplatforming the people that are trying to. So this article out of Israel from November 18th, 2021 was reporting a 5-fold increase in sudden cardiac and unexplained deaths among athletes. So these are people, young athletes, who should be in the lowest risk group here. So, I mean, it started pretty much immediately when they were rolling this out, especially in Europe. People were not given a choice. If you wanted to participate in community life, if you wanted to be a student, if you wanted to enter a store or a restaurant, you had to have proof. And now we know that the whole premise that you had to do this, even if you were young and healthy and low risk, you had to do it so you could protect the people around you, so that you wouldn't kill grandma or whatever. Now we know it was a complete lie. We have one of the lead directors of Pfizer just yesterday on video being, I'm pretty sure she was under oath by this, I believe he was a Danish politician in the European Union. Basically, he was grilling her, and did you guys have any data before basically unleashing this on the public that these actually stopped transmission? And she started laughing and she was like, well, no, we basically had to rush it to market. We had to go with the speed of science, basically. And then she mentioned the market. Basically, the market was hot. People were really afraid. There was billions to be made by releasing this without proper going through what really should have been years of safety trials to make sure this was safe. They didn't do that. They released it under emergency use authorization, and to this day, it still is under that authorization. So it's not FDA approved. There's none of the typical safety protocols in place to protect the public. And they didn't even looking at that and how risky the shot was, they still didn't give people a choice, which is, we're looking at, these are crimes against humanity. Thousands of people have died from cardiac arrest from blood clots and strokes and sudden aggressive emergence of cancers that, or people are just dying in their sleep. People are, you know, like Bob Saget, something happened to him and they're saying he fell and hit his head really hard, but I'm guessing that it most definitely had to do with the booster that he had just gotten. And I mean, guys, it's unbelievable at this point. And it's hard to know what is the motivation behind all of this. All you can really do is just look at all the, obviously there was billions of dollars at stake, and the people, you know, Pfizer, Moderna, J&J, they all made billions out of this. And all those free, you know, doses that they were advertising, those were purchased by the US government, aka taxpayer money. So the taxpayer money went to fund the development of these things, and then taxpayer money bought these doses. So these companies, they have legal immunity. There is almost no risk here. The government paid for the development of these. So basically the government paid twice, and they get to reap all the financial rewards. And the government's doing the dirty work by basically forcing this onto people everywhere. So all they get is profit, no risk, no loss. There's no lawsuits. You can't, they're protected. You can't, if you went and got this to keep your job and you were disabled and unable to work, or someone you loved and your family got it and died, you have no recourse. All you have is the possibility of gathering your evidence and then wasting 5 years of your life battling in vaccine court. People do occasionally win, but we're talking months and months and months and years of just slogging through the legal system and all this bureaucratic red tape to try to get compensation for an injury, while the people around you are probably going to mistreat you and gaslight you. People who have been injured, even people who were trying to do the right thing, and they signed up for clinical trials and they were seriously injured by this. They try to speak out, they get mocked, they get censored. Every time they start up support groups on like Facebook for these people to gather and just, you know, share emotional support and maybe some, you know, health tips or whatever, Facebook just shuts them down. It's just unreal that it really is just a crime against humanity. And you cannot look at all these deaths as just statistics. I know it's easy to get hardened because there's been so much deaths, but all of these children and young adults who died have parents that miss them, parents that are broken. And this is a great evil that has been done against all of society. We're talking globally. And I firmly believe that there is a special place in hell for the people that have orchestrated all of this right from the very beginning, from the gain of function research to them unleashing this on us all, to this rapid, you know, technology that was basically genetic therapy, experimental genetic therapy, had never been done before, just unleashed on the public, who were so, I mean, it's practically like, you know, Pastor JD said, it's practically like Stockholm Syndrome. People have been so abused and gaslighted by their own government, but the people who don't have faith in God, the government becomes like their higher power. Where else are they going to go? So they can't lose their faith in their government, because to start to question it, it would cause their whole fragile belief system to crumble. So people just keep sticking their heads in the sand. People just keep going and getting these toxic injections. And I have a friend who works in alternative healthcare, and she's seeing these people come in who've been long-term customers. They are now on their 5th dose, and these people are losing their minds. They're losing their cognitive abilities. It's terrifying. One woman said as soon as she walked out of this appointment for her 5th dose, she felt like there was an elephant on her chest. And she was an intelligent, working professional, and now she's practically senile, rambling, just not even making sense. And this is so many people, and yet they refuse to acknowledge what the actual cause is. And I have compassion for these people, but these same people are also the people that have lashed out at me for the past 2 years in this shoot the messenger type of thing, because deep down they know I'm right. And even family members have lashed out at me. I mean, I've had a lot of relationships fall apart because I am determined to speak out and tell the truth and try to warn people no matter what. I don't care if I'm on some government watch list. And you know what? I probably am. I've noticed some weird things happening lately, especially with my Facebook account. Private messages that I've been sending friends and family members have just been disappearing. So weird stuff is happening, but you know what? I don't really care. I want my name on the list because I know that this here is not my life. My life is in heaven. I know that spiritually I am already seated in heaven with Christ. My little girl is on the other side waiting for me, and I am going to run my race. I am not going to be a coward. I am not going to stay quiet. I'm going to go out with a bang and warn as many people as I can that all this horror that we're already seeing, it has been done on purpose, and it is going to get worse. This is just the beginning. We're not even in the tribulation yet, but this is where it's going. And if you have not woken up yet, you need to wake up soon, because Jesus is coming back for his church very, very soon. And at that point, the tribulation is going to start and going to kick into high gear. And all of this that has already happened will be like child's play compared to what's going to happen. So guys, you need to get your spiritual house in order. And if you have taken the toxins, I would just humble yourself before God and pray, because there is absolutely a spiritual component to this that we can only guess at right now, but we know that there is this transhumanism agenda. They want to alter and basically bastardize our God-given DNA. So they want to alter us enough so that we are not human. And I really believe that the mark of the beast is going to be some sort of transhumanism, satanic crap that you're going to inject into your body that's going to alter your DNA even more, to the point where you are no longer actually human, and at that point you are irredeemable and it's too late. So guys, just get right with God. We are in the end of days. If you are a believer in Christ and you feel like it's been really hard, it's because it has been. Because we are the last day believers. We are living in unprecedented times. These people used to hide in the shadows, smoking cigars, drinking whiskey, planning how their grand plans of eugenics and, controlling the plebs at the bottom. Well, you know what? Now they're actually doing it, and they've unleashed this on us all. But we know that ultimately God's going to win. And all these people are going to face judgment for every single horrific thing they have done. So anyways, guys, if you've listened this long, I really appreciate it. I appreciate your support. And if you have any prayer requests or comments, you're welcome to leave them below. Bye.